welcome back. I'm Mary Jo. Now this is going to be part 4 of my Winter Jewels quilt that I am making, and this is a video tutorial from Missouri Star called Winter Star. So I have my first row laid out here and my second row, so I'm going to go ahead and start pinning these together and pinning all 5 rows, because I'm going to have 5 rows of 4 each. And then after I pin them, I'll just stack them up and line them and take them over to the sewing machine and start sewing them down. Okay, so I just wanted to take a minute to interrupt here. Now, I know that this is my second row up here that I have pinned together. As I'm pinning them together, I'm noticing that these points are not going to be lined up right together. They're going to be offset, but it's going to be that way for the entire quilt. And that's because they weren't exact. And so I went back and looked at the tutorial that Jenny Dona does, and her points were offset too. So I didn't notice it until then. So hopefully it's going to look okay, because it's going to be that way throughout the quilt. But we will see. And so I've got that. This is my second row. I'm just going to put that there. This is my third row I'm starting to pin. Now, I usually have this pen right here, this upper corner of all my blocks. It just helps me to know very quickly that's that upper corner. Now, as I start pinning these rows together, I will take that pin out so it's no longer there. But what I do at the beginning of each row is I put the number of pins for the number of rows. And this is row 3. I have 3 pins there. And again, that's just a way to help me when I'm sewing it to know that it is row 3. In case for any reason things would get out of order, it's just a quick way for me to see, yep, row 3, that's where I need to be. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's just my way and what I like to do. All right, continue pinning. So, as I was laying these out, pinning together, I made a few mistakes, but that's okay. Easily fixed. I noticed these 4 patches weren't always lining up correctly, but that's okay. We can fix it. I've made some mistakes in the way they're going, and I know this one over here is wrong, so I'm gonna get out my seam ripper and fix them. Actually, I don't need to get my seam ripper out. It's just I've got the blocks kind of mixed up for the A's and B's somehow when I was laying it together. But that's all right. That's even an easier fix. Just have to move some things around. So this is all pinned together, and it is correct. Row 1, and then this is row 2 laid out. So put that there. All right. Now, let's move on to row 3 and so forth. Yep, all of those 4 patches there. Should have that little checkerboard going on there. All right, let's continue. I have these stacked up rows to sew. Now I do apologize, I confused myself for a minute over there with my stacks. I went wrong when I was cutting apart my long strand and putting them into stacks of 4. I had, if you notice back in the video, I was going through and I had folded it one way and then the other. So that's where it kind of got confused and my rows got off that way. But that's okay, it was an easy fix. I just had to shuffle some things around. That's why I lay them out to take a look at it. And the fix didn't even involve a seam ripper. It just involved me moving some things around. So we're good. So I'm back over here at the sewing machine. I'm going to sew these down. I'm just starting with row 1. And I'm going to sew all the way down that first column through all 5 of the rows. And then I will move over to that second column and kind of, so I will have like a web when it's all done. Okay, so I have those sewn together. I am just over here to press everything. I'm going to press these seams, these rows, in just alternating directions. So I'm pressing this seam this way. And then I will press the next row, the seams the other way. Then after I get all that pressed, I'll start pinning. And I do keep these together. I don't break the threads. Just kind of helps, it keeps it in the right position. Rows together, and then after I pin it, I can go over to the sewing machine. Now I just do want to take a minute or two and mention something. While I was sewing this and recording it, my mom tried calling me. So I called her back, and in the area there's been some horrific news. Not in my kids' school district, but in another one that's close by. There was a pretty big school bus accident. And there is one fatality where a child was thrown out of the school bus, died. There's 20 some other kids that are in the hospital. One is in serious condition. Now I just can't even imagine. These were all elementary school kids. I feel for all the children's parents, all the children. I can't even imagine the trauma those kids are going to have to go through. They've seen that. They saw that child get ejected from that bus. So my mind, of course, it makes you appreciate those things that you take for granted every day. My kids don't start school for a couple more days. They're here. But I can't even imagine being those parents, or that one parent that sent their child to school today. Couldn't wait to see it till they get home, to they could tell them all about it, and that child never even made it there. My heart also aches for that bus driver who, don't get me wrong, I don't think this bus driver did anything wrong, but knowing that this happened when she was driving, I just can't even imagine that bus driver and how she's feeling. So, anyway, I usually try to keep things somewhat light, but this was just an event that just happened, or I just found out about it, happened earlier this morning. It just has a lot weighing on me. So earlier, I was getting just a little bit frazzled when I had these blocks mixed up, but in the scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. It's a quilt. Like I said, my kids are here at my house, safe. Where at least one family got the worst phone call of their life today. So, just a little food for thought. Made you appreciate things. Like I said, it's not my kid's school district, but it is pretty close. So, alright, we're just going to continue pinning this. Sorry if my mood took a turn. Okay, I'm going to get sewing these down. And then after I sew these down, I'll take it over and press it. Okay, so I started pressing everything, and then I noticed this row isn't right because these shouldn't have two prints together. That's okay. I'm just going to take this off, this whole row, and if I flip these last 3 rows and pin it, it'll be right. So that's what I'm going to do. And I just wasn't paying attention. I was just distracted from other things. But that's okay. It's still an easy fix. Just rip it and we'll be good. So I ripped it out, sewed it on, and now I'm ready to sew or press the rest of this. Okay, so here is what that quilt top is looking like. The center of it is all done. Now I still have to add borders. I'm going to add a weight 2.5 inch border around that and then a bigger navy blue border. But considering the trouble, little mistakes I've made, I think it's time to walk away for a little bit and then come back. But that's what it's looking like. Okay, so I'm going to get started cutting my inner and outer borders and binding. So I'm going to put a 2.5 inch white border, inner border all the way around. So I've got my stripology ruler, and I'm just going to start cutting some 2.5-inch strips there. That's my inner border all cut. That's waist. Stack all these up. Oops. That one didn't cut all the way through. That's okay. We'll get it. Alright, now I'm going to cut my outer border. Now, I'm going to cut my outer border, I think, at 6.5. I was debating whether I want to do 5-inch or 6.5. But bigger is always better, and if I don't like it, I can always cut it down later. So I'm going to do 6.5. A few more pieces here. Alright, I'm going to cut 2 more. And then I'm going to start cutting my binding. All cut. Now I'm going to start cutting my binding. I cut my binding at 2.5 inches, so that's what I'm going to cut this on. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut 8 strips. I probably don't need 8 strips, but I know I won't need any more than that, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut it since I'm cutting everything else. I don't know how many I need because I'm not exactly sure how big my quilt's going to end up. Because I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to leave those 6.5 or put it down to 5. We'll see. All cut. So now I am just lining up all of my inner strips, and then I'm just going to cut the selvage off all of them and then pin them together into 4 different rows of 2 strips. Now, I know a lot of patterns will tell you just to take your borders and sew them all together end to end and then cut them apart. I don't like doing that just because I'm weird and I like my seams and on the borders and the center. Just my thing. So, does it waste more fabric? Yes, it does. But it's just how I like to do it. So, that's what I'll do. So, I'm just going to cut off the selvages. And I'll pin 2 strips together. So when I take it over there, I can just start sewing them down again. Okay, so I got that cut off of my binding, so I'm just going to start pinning my binding together, which I just do like that. And now, since this is a solid, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. Right or wrong side, I should say, because they're the same on both sides. Alright, so follow this all the way down. Make sure that's turned over. And then that one goes right on top. Again, is it necessary to do pin like this? Probably not. But it's what I like to do, so it's what I'll do. Just continue to do this until I get all 8 strips pinned together, and then I'll take it over to the sewing machine and sew everything, the borders and the binding. And then I'll come back and start cutting the inner border to the size I need. And I'll start with the side inner borders, and then after I sew that, then we'll cut the top inner borders, and then the side outer borders, and the top outer border. And then we will be done because my binding will already be prepared. And I'll show you how I prepare my binding and set it aside once we get over to the sewing machine. Okay, so here I am at the sewing machine, just going to sew all of these down real quick. Now I am going through and sewing all of my binding here, sewing this into a big long strip. Now I had already sewed this first one, so I'm going to add this next strip on. So I'm just going to use my diagonal seam tape. I'm going to put the needle right down there in the corner, line that on my seam tape, and sew down. And then I'm just going to butt the next one right up there and do it again. those pins out. So all of this binding is kind of bunching up on itself as we go because I'm sewing, but that's okay. So it's basically going to be one continuous sew line here. The next one. Got two more. Well, one more after this. And I ran out of bobbin thread. Just gonna use my little ender, cut that off. So now I got this all messed here. So I just find my end and I start rolling. Just start rolling until I come to the seam. Just keep rolling. It's coming though. Alright, so there's the seam. So then, I'm just going to take my scissors and about a quarter inch away I'm going to trim. Pull that out. I just kind of finger press to the side. Works for me. And then keep rolling. And I'll do this the whole length. And then I'll have my binding all done and ready to go. And that's my binding. I'll just roll it up and put a pin on there and tuck it away. But I know a lot of people will take their binding and fold it over and then press it like that. I don't do that. I don't find that it's necessary, but if you guys want to or whatever works for you. But me, when I go to pin this on, I'll just fold it over and pin it then. But I don't ever press that. But that's just me. Alright, back to the borders. The binding is finished. So let's add some side borders. So I'm going to measure my quilt here, the side. I'm just folding it over. Getting it all together. And measuring, it's coming about 30 1/4 folded over. So full length is 60 1/2. So I'm going to cut my inner borders here. These are folded over, so I'm just going to cut them at 30 1/4. And then I pin them on, sew them down, press them, and do the top border. just line it up on my cutting mat. Line this one down here on my cutting mat. Press these seams and start pinning them on. Those side inner borders all sewn on. So now I'm just going to measure to get the top and bottom border here, see what we're at, and then we'll cut those. So that is at 26.5. Yep. So it is folded over. So since these are sewn together, I can just line this right up here on 0. Get my other one. Get them all going the right way, not twisted. Lined up on top, right there. And I can just start cutting them. I'll press the seam and then pin them on, sew them and press them. Border sewed all the way on. So now I'm going to start for that outer border on the sides. So I'm just going to fold this over in half again and measure. We are at, oops, sorry, 32.5. Oh, drop my roller, but I'll get that in a minute. Just gonna line this up at 32.5. Let me grab my ruler. I just have to add that last top and bottom border on, and it's done. Alright, so let me measure this so I know how far we need to do, and it looks like it is 32.5 again. All right. Let's get it cut. And the last border pinned on, sewn on, and pressed. And then we'll hang it up and take a look at what it looks like when it's all done. We're almost there. And it's done. There we go down. And this came out to measuring 79.5 by 65. So it's 79.5 long, 65 inches wide. Now I do just want to take a closer look at all of these points. Like I said, I knew they weren't going to match up anywhere. But since it's like that throughout the whole quilt, I think it looks okay. See, all of those are offset. Alright, so that's it. My Winter Star quilt made out of the winter jewels from Bendertex. It's all done. Till next time. Bye.